Alright, hi, how you guys doing? It is episode 8, part 2 of the Chocolate Rachel Maddow show, and this is my first part 2 type of episode, but this one is going to be called Florida Water. I did a few TikTok videos talking a little bit about it, so how to start this? I am, I'm well, unfortunately, acquainted with detention centers. Unfortunately, because I've done a good amount of research, and extra unfortunately, because one time I was unlawfully detained in my 35th year. 4th year. I was thankfully at probably one of the bougiest that it could be for a detention center. But everyone, at least Texas-wise, goes through a law, which is called the Sandra Bland Law. And in those 48 hours, you learn a lot about your mental acuity. You learn a lot about your resilience because you're not able to have a blanket, pillow, nothing, in case you were going to use that for unenlightening purposes. Now, this is a Florida episode. The reason why I'm even talking about a little bit of Texas here is because I watched CBS Miami, and it was a news segment, and in that segment, it was officially, I believe they said it was six or 7 days ago, could be 8 or 9, plus or minus 1 or 2 for inaccuracies at all times. So the Democratic lawmakers and some Republican lawmakers went to quote-unquote Alligator Alcatraz. They were able to finally see the standard of living these detainees were facing. I also read a lot of articles. I also talked to a good amount of personal friends that I have that are from Florida and were born and raised there, Miami-Dade County and some other counties in Florida. And I just kind of asked them some questions based upon their upbringing in a red state, because there is quite a tie in all of us people who are born and raised in a red state that perhaps they don't have either the wealth, privilege, or unfortunately in the United States, maybe the physical acumens that red states do appreciate. And I'm talking about ethnicities and XYZ. The way you're presented, who you are, right? So it's what I found is that all of us have our tales of being in areas where the majority sometimes will act as they've been taught. All of this to say, and the reason why I'm saying this as PC as possible, is once again, even though I have no affiliation with Rachel Maddow, other than her inspiring me, I do want to be respectful to the brand that she built. On that note, I will also be changing the name of this podcast at some point coming up, just so that I can be a little more myself. And myself in terms of news and stuff like that. I'm PC, sure, but there are times when I want to get real, really, really, really real with you guys, and esoterically real. And I spoke to my distributor. He let me know they let me know, that there are ways to do private podcasts, subscriber only episodes, and things like that. And I'm learning to start to use that. I also learned that because of the political climate that we are in right now, it will not, certain things will not be automatically uploaded to YouTube because right now, independent media, politics, XYZ, we're all sort of getting the Alex Jones treatment, the InfoWars type of treatment of conspiracy, inauthentic, when we're probably the most authentic thing that you will hear from someone else that isn't maybe close to you or has that reputableness and doesn't have a boss that is making them say certain things a certain way. Now, let's just leave that nugget far, far away because let's get into the nitty-gritty of Alligator Alcatraz. So, 8 or 9 days ago, the representatives, Democrat, Republican, and in between, were finally allowed to physically visit the detention center that is called Alligator Alcatraz. And CBS Miami had a news broadcast, and it is exactly what we thought. The water that the detainees drink is out of the same sort of spigot as the toilet water. And if people are on the toilet, you cannot obviously drink water. And before I go very factual and pull up ground news and read you some of these articles, I do want to take a pause for some opinion right here and say I also watched a Republican lawmaker get on CBS Miami and say he had no problem with the conditions that these detainees were facing, including one line where he said, and I quote, "I laid down on one of the beds, and it's more comfortable than my bed at home." As someone who has laid on that type of bed, and I can't say too much because I'm getting my justice on that. The material is very, very, very firm. Depending on the level that you are in a detention center, it may have a little tiny, and I do mean tiny bit of give, but these materials that are at most of these detention centers in the United States of America are the throwaways from the VA. And the VA used to have the barracks and things like that for the people that were ever in boot camp. You know these beds, because they're the same beds you use. Down to the blankets that they give are the same ones that people in boot camps and bases and things like that they lay on. And but the worse quality than that. So it's very hard. If you are close to my age, maybe when you were in kindergarten growing up, they had some of those mats, but the very, very, very soft versions of these mats. I remember being in kindergarten or first grade, and they'd say, "It's time for nap time," and they would lay down those barely foamed out little mats, and you would get your little stuff. Your parents packed your blanket and stuff, and you lay down. It's cute that Republican lawmaker said that. Oh, it's soft. It's softer. It's more comfortable than my bed at home. Oh, really? Oh, really? No, it's not. Your entire body hurts. You go to sleep because you got to. Now, I do understand that there is a small inkling of the people at Alligator Alcatraz that are, in fact, people who broke the law, people who hurt other people who are actually doing things like smuggling other people that are unfortunately without citizenship in the United States, Sure, you've got a small inkling of the people that are, in fact, the worst, quote unquote, of the worst. But before I continue, I do want to let you guys know, I just have started diving deep into the story of the 15-year-old boy that is an American citizen that actually had to go down to Alligator Alcatraz for 3 days. And those 3 days, I believe, were when it was flooded. Now, the food has maggots in it. And this boy, this child, was put there, erroneously subjected to that. For what reason, right? The point of detention centers and some of the things that they do are on purpose to be cruel, because it is supposed to be a punitive thing. You're not supposed to go in there and be like, it feels so great. I get it. Now, if it's a federal crime, then yeah, you're able to do all the things I've heard. I don't know, but I've heard it from multiple people that I trust. County jails, detention centers, for the most part, you're going to experience some things there that's the point, regardless of if it's legal, right? So let's proceed with the news portion of this podcast now. Ground news, once again, and no, I'm not sponsored yet. Praying that one day they'll sponsor me, because, Alright, so let's get started. I can't put up the CBS Miami thing just yet. Give me a few days to reacclimate myself with OBS and some of the other streaming things. And then on these videos, I will go ahead and put some of that visual media, like CBS 5 Miami. Oh my. Looks like there is breaking news. A vehicle drove into a crowd in East Hollywood, any more than 20 people. This is so sad. There's so many things that are going on, and it's hard sometimes to just continue to stay on topic when the news never stops. People never stop doing things, and it's so sad. But let me finish this update. So here we go. And another thing, news-wise for you guys, I do want to tell you that the reason why those lawmakers were actually able to physically visit Alligator Alcatraz is because some of them sued Ron DeSantis when they were blocked from visiting. And that's where I want to start. We're going to do The Hill. The Hill is typically a central publication, so we're going to do The Hill. So this was on July 11th at 4:33 p.m., just to give you the background of how these lawmakers were able to visit Alligator Alcatraz. So the ones that sued, the name of this article is Florida Lawmakers Denied Alligator Alcatraz Access, Sue DeSantis. So it's 5 state Democratic lawmakers who were denied entry, and they sued Governor Ron DeSantis. It was that Thursday. This was July 11th that this happened. This is one of the quotes from the Associated Press, who basically got a lot of quotes from them, and this is what they're saying. Quote, "The DeSantis administration's refusal to let us in wasn't some bureaucratic misstep." And this was a joint statement from those 5 lawmakers. Okay? It was a deliberate obstruction meant to hide what is really happening behind those gates. The lawmakers on Saturday were turned away from the detention center, which is in the Florida Everglades and is overseen by the state. In a state Supreme Court lawsuit, the plaintiffs argued state law does not inhibit their efforts to conduct legislative oversight of the facility. And just to give you a little more insight, here we go. So I do want to point out, okay, Florida State Representative Angie Nixon, okay, that's one of the legislative folks that were in this suit. And then Democratic State Reps Anna Escamani, and I apologize if I did not say that right. And all of the language stuff that I have, that's how I would say that typically. And I apologize if I did not say that right. I will do better next time if I don't. Sorry. Michelle Rayner, and State Senators Chevron Jones and Carlos Guillermo Smith. This was the people who sued Ron DeSantis to be able to get that access for the lawmakers. Now, here we go. This is so hard sometimes to not use nasty language. But I want to do this article. It is, so this is a summary part of it, and then I'll tell you the name of the article that I'm going to be reading. But detained immigrants at Alligator Alcatraz say there are worms and food and wastewater on the floor. Now, on July 3rd of 2025, authorities received the first detainees at Alligator Alcatraz, a $450 million Everglades facility nicknamed for its alligator-infested surroundings. Funded by emergency state and federal allocations. I just want to say, that was FEMA's money. Okay. Established as part of the Republican administration's push to increase U.S. migrant detention capacity. Speaking from the facility, La Figura? I speak Spanish, but something tells me that's probably not supposed to be spelled like that. Anyway, there's no water to take a bath. It's been 4 days since I've taken a bath. While he added, quote, they only brought a meal once a day and it had maggots. Some people may be shocked by this, but yeah. In response, officials said, quote, all of these allegations from the violent criminal defense cited are untrue. The facility meets all state and federal obligations for detentions. In letters to state and federal officials, Mayor Levin Cava called for oversight access to Alligator Alcatraz, requesting weekly reports and scheduled site visits. No, we're gonna do the News Republic. Actually, no, that's left leaning. We're gonna do Forbes. I used to like Forbes. I guess Forbes now is just, I don't know. I'm not gonna say a whole news thing like that is terrible now, but there have been some reports. Quote, attorney says they can't see immigration clients at Alligator Alcatraz. This was published on July 9th at 9:15 a.m. and it was updated that same day at 10:01 p.m. This is by Stuart Anderson, senior contributor, and this is what we have. Immigration attorneys say they have been unable to see their clients sent to the Alligator Alcatraz detention facility in Florida. Donald Trump toured the state-run camp with Governor Ron DeSantis and implied immigrants would be deterred from escaping because nearby alligators would they eat them. In the haste to build and promote the facility, including by selling online merchandise, because America has always been good with alligators and the people they deem not worthy. I implore you guys to look up alligators and I guess right now I can't say the black natives, but black Americans went through. Look up black American children and alligators during the Jim Crow time and slavery. So, that online merchandise. Florida and Trump officials neglected to provide access to attorneys and ensure detained immigrants could be located and meet with legal representatives who can guarantee due process. You cannot have due process if you're not able to talk to your legal counsel. And if you don't have legal counsel, one will be afforded to you. Court appointed, you're supposed to be able to do that. This is not only Florida that does this, by the way. Immigration attorneys unable to see clients, We talked about that. They criticized the lack of due process and access to counsel and expressed concerns about the conditions. The Miami Herald described detainees suffering from mosquito bites, days without showers, and scant sunlight coming through the heavy-duty tents, making it difficult for them to know whether it's day or night. 2 weeks have passed since Florida Highway Patrol officer arrested the Honduran immigrant client of Magdalena Cupres and Associates. He was stopped at a weigh station in Tampa because he owns a construction company and he was required to stop for his truck to be weighed. The client had a valid Florida driver's license. The patrol officer called Customs and Border Protection on him. The client called me and the officer took the phone from him and spoke with me. She asked why CBP was alerted. Quote, I was advised that the client looked Hispanic and had a Hispanic name. And now they are collaborating with Immigration and Customs Enforcement and CBP and their orders are to call CBP anytime they encounter anyone they suspect is an immigrant. I asked if they would have followed the same process if it had been me driving, and the response was, it depends on if you look Hispanic. Her client was in the first group taken to Alligator Alcatraz. She filed a bond motion at Chrome Detention Center, which has an immigration court. The motion has not been processed by the court, as the clerk advised me that the only information they had about the process for clients detained at Alligator Alcatraz was what they learned independently from the news. Once again, I would like to say that one more time. The clerk of Crum Detention Center, okay? There's a nearby detention center that actually has an immigration court because, they actually follow the law because, they follow the law. Said, the process for clients detained at Alligator Alcatraz was what they learned independently from the news. Excuse me. Her associate, Victor Martinez, spent all day at the Alligator Alcatraz facility and attempted to meet with their client. Quote, we were advised that they had no instructions on how to handle attorney visits, said Cupres. Quote, he was first told to wait, and he did so for hours. They finally told him to come back the next day, and perhaps he would have, quote-unquote, better luck. At the Chrome Detention Center in Miami, immigration attorneys can meet with clients at most times of the day in person or via secure, private video calls. Quote, my client has been detained for 2 weeks now, and I understand he doesn't have status, but he's not a criminal. And he applied for the status before he was detained. He had a valid driver's license, and no one can tell me who has jurisdiction over him. My concern is that they're just going to ship him out and he's never going to have a court hearing. Her client is married and has lived in the United States for approximately 2 decades. On background, the Department of Homeland Security responded, quote, ICE does not manage this facility. The facility is managed by the state of Florida, the Division of Emergency Management. Florida has National Guard officials operating under 287G and trained to perform detention function. Under President Trump's leadership, we are working at turbo speed on cost-effective and innovative ways to deliver on the American people's mandates for mass deportations of criminal illegal aliens. One more immigration attorney and their experience before we move on to the latest up-to-date news that is coming out about Alligator Alcatraz. So Chelsea M. Noel of Dubril and Noel also has sought to contact her client. Quote, my client was transferred to the Alligator Alcatraz facility after being picked up from an ICE hold. Since his transfer, I have been unable to schedule any contact with him. I have reached out to the Chrome Detention Center, and they advised me that they have no information on the new facility yet. So these people rushed this facility together. Mind you, most lawmakers had no idea that this was about to happen. DeSantis, it wasn't like there was tons of bills and he just slid that pork in. No. No, they had no idea, guys. They had no idea. Let's do an article from the fact that they had no idea. Okay, so DeSantis administration blindsided county officials with plans for Alligator Alcatraz. Several Florida Democrats introduced the No Cages in the Everglades Act, aiming to defund Alligator Alcatraz in the Everglades. Amid reports of inhumane treatment at Alligator Alcatraz, lawmakers cited crowded cages, unbearable heat, and sanitation failures, plus flooding risks during the hurricane season. Miami Herald data shows only a third of the detainees have criminal records. PolitiFact found Trump's, quote, only the worst of the worst claim untrue, and records show 34 calls averaging 2 per day. DHS defended that, quote, ICE has higher detention standards than most of the U.S. prisons. DeSantis predicted increased deportation pace next week, and GOP officials maintain that the facility is operating as intended. Also, another thing I want to note right here is that Alligator Alcatraz is just the first step in what DeSantis wants to do. Quote, not just Alligator Alcatraz, DeSantis floats building another immigration detention center. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis announced plans to consider Camp Blanding, joint training center for an immigration and customs enforcement detention center. DeSantis described the new facility as being similar to the already planned detention facility at an isolated Everglades airfield. Democrats and activists criticized the detention plan as politically motivated spectacle. and state officials plan for a temporary detention facility using structures like tents and trailers. It is. Let's do the Associated Press for the portion of letting you guys know about Alligator Alcatraz just being one of a series of detention centers that DeSantis wants to do. This Associated Press. Not just Alligator Alcatraz. DeSantis folks building another immigration detention center. This was updated on June 25th, 2025. So I'm doing this because I'm sure some of you guys miss that this is going to be way more than just Alligator Alcatraz. So this is why I wanted to go back in time sort of to pull this back up to y'all's attention. Tallahassee, Florida. Florida officials are pursuing plans to build a second detention center to house immigrants as part of the state's aggressive push to support the federal government's crackdown on illegal immigration. Republican Ron DeSantis said Wednesday he's considering standing up a facility at the Florida National Guard Training Center known as Camp Blanding, about 30 miles southwest of Jacksonville in northeast Florida. In addition to the site under construction at a remote airstrip in the Everglades that state officials have dubbed Alligator Alcatraz. Here we go. Detention center made of heavy-duty tents and trailers. Speaking to reporters at an event in Tampa, DeSantis touted the state's muscular approach to immigration enforcement and its willingness to help President Donald Trump's administration meet its goal of more than doubling its existing 41,000 beds for detaining migrants to at least 100,000 beds nationwide. State officials have said the detention facility, which they've described as temporary, will rely on heavy-duty tents, trailers, and other impermanent buildings, allowing the state to operationalize 5,000 immigrant detention beds by early July and free up space in the local jails. I think the capacity that will be added there will help the overall national mission. It will also relieve some burdens on our state and local law enforcement, DeSantis said. Managing the facility via a team of vendors will cost $245 a bed per day, or approximately $450 million per year, U.S. officials said. The expenses are to be incurred by Florida and reimbursed by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. In the eyes of DeSantis and other state officials, the remoteness of the Everglades airfield surrounded by mosquito and alligator-filled wetlands that are seen as sacred to Native American tribes makes it an ideal place to detain migrants. Clearly, from a security perspective, if someone escapes, there's going to be alligators. Not going anywhere. Critics condemn the plan as cruel. What's happening is very concerning. The level of dehumanization, said Maria my lord, my apologies. Let me say that again. Maria Asuncion Villallo is the Florida campaign coordinator at the immigration advocacy group American Friends Service Committee. Quote, it's like a theatricalization of cruelty. Gosh, that was a good word. Wow, that's a good word, Ms. Balayo. Advocates were already sounding the alarm about conditions at a federally run detention center in South Florida, where the reports have flooded in about the lack of water and food and unsanitary confinement and medical neglect. Now, let me just say, that's the end of non-opinion here. We've got to civically light a fire under our people, because when people of all denominations, of all visualizations, all come together in one accord and raise the frequency, a lot of things get done. And I know people in Florida are doing it. I know they are. I've seen the reports. I've seen those people. I've seen the protests. I've seen them going out there religiously. And a lot of these people that are doing it are retirees, and they're out there fighting. These are like Gen Xers and more. They are fighting for what is good. We need more people to at least civically come together and say, this is not right. A lot of people like to pretend and play, oh, if I was here doing this, I would have made sure that, and all of these people, all the the Jewish people would not have had to go through that. The black people that I were around, they would not have done that. I would have been a part of the Underground Railroad, In everyone's mind, they're a Marvel character or really a DC character. And they would go and do these things. But in reality, most Americans don't care unless it affects them. And that is a problem. You're not a Christian. You're not of Islam. You're not Jewish. You're not of the Buddha faith. You're not of any faith where do goodness to others as you would like done to yourself. And the golden rule is plastered and respected. You are not a part of those if you do not care about everyone else. If you're Christian, right? It's everybody's God's children, right? Love thy neighbor. That is not how you are supposed to treat anyone. And to stand for it, there needs to be conviction in your faith. And faith is more. Faith is more than just a word, right? It's actionable. But also, even if you're an atheist, you should have your own morals. You should have something that you stand by. You should have something that you stand up for. Something that convicts you to say, in whatever way is the safest for you, I understand that. I do. Whatever is, doesn't, I guess, yeah, this is safest way for you. It could be as simple as sharing proper sources with your friends and family. It could be fact-checking. It could be next time you hear Bubba Joe say something crazy, you say, hey, Bubba Joe, I love you, Bubba Joe. You love me, Bubba Joe. Imagine if I was in Alligator Alcatraz. How would you fight for me? A lot of people in our family have been through the criminal justice system in the United States. JPay, Securus, all owned by Aventive. Have you ever paid for a jail call? Have you ever put money on your family's bucks? Imagine not being able to talk to your family member. You don't know where they're at. You don't know what they're eating. You don't know anything. Then all of a sudden you get a call in there in El Salvador. They don't know anything in El Salvador. I mean, it's all Spanish. How would you feel? And it's sad that you have to put some you in these people for them to care, but if that's the problem of bridging the gap, then we know how to solve the problem. Make them feel personally affected by what's going on to other people. We all have, people in our family that they've been jaded by their lives or, things like that, and they have outdated ideas. I get it. Reach them. If the safest thing for you to do is educate that hard to love member of your family on some things and that sphere of influence of just knowing the facts and re-waking back up the empathy that make humans human, then do that. Because what are we fighting for if not for the greater good of the human race? Think about it. Thank you so much for listening to the Chocolate Rachel Maddow. And please, guys, be safe.